Good morning, everyone. I do have everybody on mute, so if you'd like to talk during the meeting, please, you're going to have to unmute yourself. Colleen, I saw was on my screen a second ago. There she is. She's going to be manning the chat box, so if you don't want to chime on in, but would prefer to put something in the chat box, she will monitor that. Gosh, the weather has really changed over the last couple of days. It almost reminds me a little bit of fall, but we're not quite there yet. But anyway, it feels good not having that really, really hot, humid weather. So a couple things this morning before we get into the slides. I know Dan and James are with us this morning with Home Sale Mortgage. I talked to at least Dan this morning a little bit, and I know he's communicated with James, and I know they have one or two things they'd like to review with you. So Dan, you want to take it away?
Yeah, so I just wanted to briefly talk a little bit about forbearance agreements. Have seen a couple of those recently. I'm actually dealing with a client right now that has a forbearance agreement on their current home, and they are looking to purchase another home. So just kind of a little bit of insight. So a forbearance agreement, basically back in March when Corona hit, there was some things going on that a lot of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and other mortgage entities offered the opportunity for borrowers to essentially put their mortgage payments on hold for a period of time, especially if individuals were impacted financially by their employment. And basically what a forbearance agreement was, it's kind of like just a pause of your mortgage payments. In some cases, it was 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be. The benefit to the borrower was they did not have to make payments during this said time, and it was not going to be reported as delinquency. So, in some cases, it was something that was absolutely needed. So now that we're, 5, 6 months past that, some of these forbearance agreements are expiring. And what essentially is happening, and every situation was a little different depending on the individual, but the most important thing to think about in our world is this. If somebody is currently in a forbearance agreement and they're looking to sell their home and buy another, the existing forbearance agreement needs to be essentially removed from the current mortgage. This can present a challenge depending on the circumstances for the individual. So if they haven't made payments for 4 months, let's say, and they don't have the means to pay those payments right now, it could essentially jeopardize and almost disqualify them from being able to purchase another home. So, it's really about working with the client individually, finding out exactly what the specifics of their forbearance agreement were, and looking for a way to resolve it. It must be resolved in order for them to be able to buy another home. Because essentially, if it's not resolved, it could turn into a pretty damaging delinquency for the current mortgage. So obviously, if they have delinquency on their current mortgage, it would prevent them from most likely qualifying for another mortgage. Again, I haven't seen a lot of this, just starting to see some of it now. But in those situations, we need to work with each client individually and try to resolve this before they get to the point of listing their current home and looking to buy another. If there's any, certain circumstances that you've come across with a client, definitely feel free to have them speak with either James or myself. It's just kind of another item that we need to now explore up front when doing that pre-approval prior to somebody looking to sell and buy. So that's all I really had about that. And I think James is on the call now. There he is. Okay.
Yep.
James?
All right. How's everybody doing? Just wanted to update you guys on USDA turn times. That continues to be, kind of a thorn in our side when we're dealing with USDA financing. They are 8 days behind, as I had mentioned one of our previous calls. 8 days behind means once we get the approval from our underwriting, we send it off to USDA, and if they get it today, they're not working that file with USDA until 8 days from now. So they work it, from the, the last one in, moving forward. So that's something that that we're running into right now. PHFA, they've been good. They're 24-hour turn time. So just keep that in mind when you're writing up agreements for USDA financing. Just make sure to give enough time. We can turn, regular, conventional, and FHA and things like that, and 35 days we can make that happen. But USDA, we want to make sure that we're at least 45 days, just to give time, because we don't want to miss closing dates. So that gives enough time to get it out to USDA and get it closed up in time. And that's all I have.
Thanks, James. Colleen, I know that there's something in the chat box from Chris. Do you want to read that off for Dan and or James?
Dan, if the proceeds from the sale of the home cover the mortgage and the forbearance, would that still hold up the seller's ability to purchase the next home?
Yeah, I was actually typing and replying, but I thought it was just to me, and I did see it was to everyone. So my understanding to that, the answer is yes. Their current mortgage needs to be out of forbearance before they would essentially qualify for another mortgage.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you being here this morning. I know home sale settlement, Sarah is on vacation and Carrie is at a settlement right now. So we're going to shift to James White with home sale insurance. James.
Morning, everybody. Yeah, I just have one quick thing on wind and hurricane deductibles. I notice this sometimes when I see something from customers who get quotes from other carriers that they might have a hurricane or wind deductible that is a percentage of the dwelling's replacement cost. And that doesn't really do too much good to the customer. So I try not to send anything out with that at all unless the customer would request it by any chance. But I typically send things out with deductibles at $1,000, or if they have it for $2,500 and $5,000 occasionally, instead of the wind and hurricane deductibles, because that's a percentage of the dwelling's replacement cost. And a lot of people don't know that that does increase year to year, because all carriers have what's called inflation guards on their replacement costs as well too. So if the customer goes with that, which is why I don't like to sell it, the deductible is actually going to increase for wind and hurricane damage year by year if they have that. So that's just something that I thought would be worthwhile sharing with all the realtors today. So that's all I have today.
Thanks, James. I am going to share my screen. Okay. Joining us this morning is Matt Steger. Matt owns and is the main inspector for Win Home Inspections. He is one of our VIP vendors. And Matt, we invite VIP vendors on here so that they can tell us new things that are happening in their portions of the business that they deal with. And Matt, before we actually get into this sewer scan inspection, can you give everybody 30 seconds, brief background, how long you've been in the business, that type of thing?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Tom, first. Sure. I've been the owner and operator of Win Home Inspection since 2002. So we're approaching 20 years. So obviously I've been a VIP vendor, I think since 2004. So that's 16 years that I've worked with a lot of the Berkshire Hathaway agents.
Uh-huh. All right. And Matt got in touch with me and told me about a new service that they're offering. So I'm going to advance the screen here. Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, at the beginning of this year, we started offering sewer scan inspections. A little background first. Most homeowners and home buyers first never think twice about a sewer line because it's underground. They don't think about it. And also, most homeowners are not don't know, I should say, that they are responsible for the sewer line under their home. And that's from the home all the way out to the sewer connection out under the street. So even if it's beyond their property line, they're responsible. So if there's a clog, if there's a breakage, if there's tree roots, some other damage, it's their responsibility, not the public sewer authority's responsibility to maintain, inspect, repair the sewer line. So obviously, the sewer scan service allows the home buyer or homeowner, if they're not even buying or selling, to still have the underground sewer line inspected, and that's from the house connection, usually a clean out either in the basement or in the front yard, and it runs all the way out to the street connection. Now, of course, if there's a clog or tree root or something, we don't really go beyond that because we don't want to get our camera stuck beyond the clog. But once we find a clog or an issue, we pretty much have found what we're looking for. So this essentially entails running up to 100 feet from actually it's about 120 feet, is about as long as mine goes, but we put the camera in, we record the whole thing, and it also has audio, and we send the camera down. You can watch the camera going down the sewer line. You can see if there's connections, from another drain from the house connecting into that. And like I said, you can follow the whole path. It shows you distances. So if we set it at 0, when the camera enters the drain line, and we can obviously see what the camera is seeing, it shows us distances so we can tell, if we see a blockage, say 20 feet out, we know it's 20 feet, give or take a foot or so based upon what the camera is measuring as well. And like I said, it's recorded. So we get all the way out to the street connection, and the recording itself, we upload that to YouTube as a private link. So only the person that actually has the link can access the video. So whether we find anything or whether we find nothing, obviously I still send a report to the client. It has the summary of what we found, where we entered the drain line, what type of drain material we found, whether it's cast iron, PVC, whatever. Then of course it'll list what we found, and then also we'll then have a video link to watch the YouTube video. Seeing obviously the graphic you can see here, it can be done with a home inspection or it can be done standalone. A lot of people are under the assumption they probably don't need to have it done with a fairly new home. In most cases, it's probably true, but we've actually have found some issues in homes that aren't that old, only a few years. Obviously, the longer the sewer line's been under the ground, if it's a cast iron line, say 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, obviously the longer it's been there, the more of a chance of a potential issue there could be. Also trees, the biggest culprit as far as issues into the sewer line are tree roots. Now, just because you don't see a tree in the front yard right now doesn't mean there might not be an issue, because there could have been a tree taken down 10 years ago. The roots are still there. The roots are still looking for water. So again, don't assume you don't necessarily have a sewer line issue just because you don't see a tree in the front yard. Also, as part of a home inspection, we're obviously running water, the sinks, the tubs, the showers, and whatnot. We're not running 7 fixtures at once like it might be done when you're living in the home. Obviously, the more volume of water you're putting down a drain pipe, the more potential you might be to actually find a clog. Whereas running a bathtub and a shower, a sink at once, doing a home inspection, and then going to the other bathroom and doing the same thing, you might not necessarily find a clog or a backup. This allows you to help find that. So like I said, there's 3 different pictures there. Obviously, the first stage, you can see that there's an area of, if you want to call it a sinkage, that the line has sunken because of tree roots. The second picture you can see is obviously it's down further, and then of course it's actually a breakage in stage 3. So I mean, the 3 biggest things that we're looking for are low spots. Obviously, as we're running our camera down the sewer line, if we see, if we get down, say, 30 feet and we see accumulated water, we know there's a low spot there. That could be simply just from ground saturation. It could be from ground settlement. If we see, obviously, tree roots, obviously we know there's a tree root issue there. So breakages, blockages, and tree roots and clogs like that, that's Those are really the things we're looking for. And overall, it takes probably 10, 20 minutes or so to do the sewer scan. The biggest thing is probably getting the clean out off, which is the cap on the sewer line, whether it's inside or outside. A somewhat newer PVC clean out doesn't take much effort to remove. Sometimes the older homes will have a brass or a cast iron clean out. Those can be difficult. And sometimes you can't get the cover off at all, which we don't force it. We don't want to break the sewer line, but obviously we do our best to try to get the sewer cap open so we can get our camera in and see what's going on.
And Matt, first of all, thanks for being here this morning. Matt did forward on to me his some of the graphics that you see here on the screen, which I'll get out to everybody in a PDF format. In addition, he has a price list not only for his inspection services, but also for the sewer scan inspection that he talked about here. So that'll be part of the information that I send out after this meeting. So Matt, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here and sharing some of your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you too.
And before I get off of this, I did contact James White yesterday and this morning about insurance and how does insurance cover or not cover what Matt just talked about here. James, you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, if you go with the standard homeowner's policy, it does not cover it. But when I quote everybody that comes through the office and anybody on my own as well too, I always quote it with that service line coverage. Some of them call it utility line coverage. It has a bunch of different names. And I typically quote it around the $10,000 amount for them, and they have the option to purchase it or decline it basically. But I always like to give them the option to go with that if they want it. It's not too much, to tell you the truth, annually. Probably about $40 to $50 annually, most carriers, and some carriers have an age limit on it as well, or a waiting period, but it all depends on the carrier for that. That was basically all I had on that topic.
Thanks, James.
There's one other thing I wanted to bring up too real quick. To repair a sewer line, obviously, is not inexpensive either. Generally, a contract, and because it involves digging in most cases. So generally, a contractor is going to charge upwards of $2,000 just to get on site and start digging. So if we do see an issue, obviously, it's good for the buyer to know whether their sewer line is clean or not, just because of the potential costs of repairing something in the future, or in the current. You know, if we do find an issue, obviously it's something that you can negotiate, hopefully.
Okay.
So it's not a cheap thing to fix if we do find, but you want to find it. Obviously, it's protecting you as an agent, and of course, protecting your clients too. If there is an issue, you want to find it and obviously have it addressed.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, here's my monthly let's wear a mask. I know that we're all busy and we're now into this pandemic probably a couple of months, and we all get a little lax at time, myself included. And I'm finding more and more people as I walk around the office, and I try the best I can to set a good example for everybody. But I'm finding more and more when I'm out in the hallways and whatnot that people are going, oh, I forgot my mask. And I get it, because it's one of those things that it's, you know, we really don't think about it that much. But I wanted to make sure everybody is aware that wearing this mask and what Janice does at the front desk as far as logging people in and out of our office building is extremely important in case we do have a situation where somebody has COVID or somebody's been around COVID. So please, just a friendly reminder for you to keep those masks on, especially in the public spaces within the office building. I appreciate it. Also,
Hey, Tom,
yeah, go ahead.
before we continue on, Brian had a question for James White. So I want to, would insurance cover repair if there was no in-home damage yet? James, are you still on the call?
James, you're on mute. You're on mute. James, you're on mute. Tell you what, we'll get back.
Okay.
We'll put that in the chat afterwards, okay? He was on mute the whole time. I wanted to make sure everybody was aware that it did come out this past week because of the pandemic and everybody's kind of trying to figure out what they want to do. The bulk registration for the upcoming sales convention for Berkshire Hathaway Home Services has been extended until the end of September. So if it's one of those things that you were on the fence and you're just thinking about it at this point in time, you have a little bit more time, please either see Colleen or myself and we'll get you registered. Also, I sent this out this past week to the entire office. I'll send it out once again as a PDF along with the information from this meeting. Berkshire Hathaway Home Services franchise was the lead article in Real Estate Magazine this past month. Some great information in there. Please, when you get the PDF, read it. It's a good PR and promo piece. I know I posted it on our Facebook page for everybody to share, but it is a great PR piece for our franchise. And also, we literally just got these about 2-3 weeks ago because of the 2019 awards that were given out at the previous convention. Literally almost within a week after that convention, everything shut down, including the franchise offices. So we just got our awards here at North Point. They are down in conference room number 5. They'll be on display there. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that we did receive them now that it's September of 2020, but we got them. Just wanted to make you aware. In addition, this came out this past week also. Jesse Thomas, who visits us or has been visiting us usually once or twice a year, he's with Dergalis. They have a special program for real estate agents where you can self-enroll right now to have some of your commission held back so that at the end of the year you can pay your federal income tax. Here is the link, and by the way, this slide presentation will go on out, so you'll be able to get on here and investigate what that service is, what you have to do to go through that, but it's a valuable thing. A lot of agents find themselves at the end of the year and they haven't set aside enough taxes, and it gets to be problematic. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that this is available for you. Okay, some transaction reminders. And I have found that the longer that we go where agents are operating remotely and our staff is trying to process these things, some of these things are getting away from us. And I just wanted to remind agents from some things that I'm hearing, not only from our accounting department, but from our administrative staff. So here's the first one. We're getting lots of deposit checks, and you probably have seen this because you're getting group emails to the entire office saying, hey, is anybody working with John and Mary Smith? We received a deposit check. And then we go ahead and we look in the loop, and there's nothing in Dotloop on this transaction. So one of the things I'm going to say to you here is please remember to submit your transactions to the loop. And secondly, it really helps our admin staff and our accounting group that when the check comes in, if you can remind your clients to just put in the note section, it's a deposit check for, in this case, 456 Elm Avenue in Lancaster. It goes a long way toward helping us. And once again, in Dotloop, remember, submit for review. If you get new things into your loop, remember to submit that to our staff so that they know they can keep your loop up to date. Here's something else that we're having a little bit of a problem with is the transaction summary report. In some instances, agents are just forgetting to submit that with their transactions, but when they are submitting it, the issue that we're having is, as we all know, during the course of a transaction, sometimes things change. Sale prices, people, settlement dates, all kinds of things change in a transaction. And when that's happening, we're going back to the original TSR and we're changing it on there. And the problem occurs is that original TSR has already been shipped off to accounting. they have all that original information. If we ship a second TSR to accounting, they now have to review the entire TSR sheet, almost put them side by side to see where the differences are. Can it be done? Yes, absolutely, but it's very, very time consuming. There is a TSR change sheet that looks like this, that's also available in Dotloop. Please, if you're making changes to TSRs, utilize the TSR change sheet. Same thing. Now, this is, last I checked yesterday, this is not in Dotloop yet, but will probably be there any day now. This is our revised accounting settlement notice. These have to be turned in within 10 days of a settlement. And we're now putting a reminder, I have it here in yellow, that we are doing our deposit checks out of our escrow account in something called net funding. It's going to take a while to get used to. We have some agents who are trying to go to settlement and saying, hey, where is my deposit check to take to the settlement table? Well, we're doing net funding. So we put a little explanation on the accounting settlement notice as to what this actually is to help you deal with this, and also to communicate this to the title companies that you're working with. So I wanted to make you aware that this change, while it might not be in Dotloop yet, it's probably going to be there within days. And then finally, addendums to listing contracts and sales agreements. Make sure you submit them also for review. In many instances, we're getting agents that are putting the agreement of sale or the listing contract into the loop itself, which is super and great, but then things change, as we just discussed, and those changes are never submitted for review, so we don't know what has happened. In many instances, some of these addendums never even get into the loop, and we don't find out about it until either the day of settlement or sometime a short time before settlement, which can cause problems. So once again, make sure you get all these things into the loop, makes the transaction much smoother for the admin and also the accounting department to process everything for you. So we've just discovered within the last week or so that there's now another status in Bright. It's called a delayed entry listing. So as if we didn't have enough statuses in Bright, we all go cross-eyed looking at some of this stuff sometime. I need to explain what the differences are between these two statuses. Here's the office exclusive, and this is what everybody is aware of. This is when the seller requests the listing be withheld from the MLS, and the entry date on it is unknown. Basically, we're just saying we're going to keep it out of the MLS. We don't know when we're going to put it into the MLS, so it's an unknown entity at this point in time. The difference between that and a delayed entry listing is the seller requests the listing to be entered into the MLS at a later date. In other words, the date is known. So the big difference between the two, one is known, the other one is unknown. So it does matter how we process this. And this is where we discovered this past week what I meant by this. Under the office exclusive, the office exclusive form must be signed by the seller and submitted to Bright within 3 business days of taking the listing. The form is signed at the same time as the listing contract. I think we've reviewed this a couple times now, so everybody, none of this should be too much of a surprise to people. However, with a delayed entry listing, one of the key things with a delayed entry listing is you do not need one of those forms. You do not need the office exclusive form. However, you do need to make a note in the listing contract, and where you make a note is on line 25F. I have it in yellow here. You're basically saying that because you know when the date is ahead of time, you're saying we are going to put this in the MLS on September 15th, 2020. If in fact you know that and you put it into the listing contract, you do not need that Bright form that I just showed you, okay? So save you a little bit of paperwork. With both of these, you still cannot advertise the property. So it's not in the MLS, regardless of whether it's delayed entry listing or an office exclusive, you still may not advertise anywhere. All right, so that is the same. Now, here's a word of caution, and I've run across this probably a half a dozen times over the last 30 days, and our admin staff is experiencing it also. A lot of agents are, when they take either a coming soon or an office exclusive, and now we have this delayed entry listing, instead of putting it where it should be, they're going here to clause 2B and entering a start date there for the coming soon. That's not where it goes. Essentially what you're doing is this 2B should be used when the listing actually starts. This is not an MLS entry date. So we've had some instances in the past where agents have come to me and said, hey, I got an agreement of sale on this property that's coming soon. It was a sight unseen. And when we look at the listing contract, it says we don't even have the property listed yet. So it can become a problem. Do not use 2B for a coming soon, an office exclusive, or a delayed listing entry, okay? Just a word to the wise. Okay, I'm now going to deal with some Dotloop things and I've been alluding to this over the last probably month or two. And I've told you that we're going to have some changes that are occurring within Dotloop. Mainly it's going to be behind the scenes with our admin staff. But you as agents will probably notice some changes in how your loop actually looks. So what I'm going to do is kind of share with you in bits and pieces where we're going here. So 2 reasons why we're doing this and making some changes to how we process stuff. The first is we're just kind of cleaning up files. I open occasionally loops that look exactly like this. It's really difficult to find things. There's things that are all over the place. Things are mislabeled. I don't know what goes what has been archived, what hasn't been archived. In some instances, agents have multiple forms that say the same thing. Some are signed, some aren't signing. So we're going to be cleaning up files. Our admin staff will be cleaning up files as we go forward. Now, having said that, what we're going to be talking about, if you're working on something or something's in progress, our staff is going to basically be instructed, leave that there. But if we have something that is signed, let's say it's an addendum for something, and we have 4 other addendums that say essentially the same thing, one's half signed, one's in the process of, we're going to clean up the file a little bit. That's one of the reasons. The second reason is this, and I kind of look at this like an iceberg. And I think everybody's aware, if you look at an iceberg, and by the way, I've never seen one, but I've seen pictures, and here's a good example. An iceberg has a little bit of the ice showing on the surface. And to be frank, as a company, North Point, we're presently using that little bit above the water. What is below the water, we haven't been using literally for years. In some instances, some of our admin staff didn't even know it existed. So we are going to start utilizing some of these features that we have not used. And by the way, you as agents, some of the stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you, not only on this call, but on future calls, you may look at and say, gosh, I didn't know that existed. And some of this not only is for admins, but also for agents also. So we're going to give this to you in bits and pieces. And here's my little bunny taking a little nibble at stuff. We're not going to throw all this stuff out at one time, because if we do that, not only will you get frustrated as an agent, but our admin staff is going to get frustrated. So here's what you're going to see over the next 7 to 10 days. There is a details section in every loop. Most agents either A, don't know it exists, or B, just ignore it and never put anything into the details section. our admin staff is going to start filling out the details section. Now, if you as an agent, if you're used to doing that, admins are just going to check to see that the information's there, which is great. But if it's not there, admins are going to get into your loops and they're actually going to input information that we'll be able to search later on if we need to search transactions. So that's one change that you're going to see. Another one, tasks are going to be implemented for better compliance. Right now, the way that we handle things is when an admin sees something in a transaction that is either missing or needs to be adjusted, they usually send out one email. And that's usually it. And in many instances, the agent either sees it and forgets about it or it is never addressed. And in many instances, right before settlement, we have a situation where we're missing valuable documents and we're scrambling around at the last second. So we are going to start implementing tasks where our admin staff, if things are missing or if things need to be followed up on, they are going to be informing you with emails as time goes on. Well, what might be some things that they would send you emails on? Here's just a short list. So for instance, deposit checks that are due. When we are processing listings, we're going to take a look at the date that the deposit check is due here at our office. We are going to put it in a task and we are going to assign that to an agent. The agent being you as the listing agent. So if we're due a deposit, $2,000 in 5 days, they're going to put a reminder in here to remind you in 5 days, if we don't have that deposit, that you're going to get an email as the listing agent to follow up with the buyer's agent to say, hey, where is that? In many instances, just to let you know, I have dealt with transactions that are going south, and when we check to see if the deposit has been received, we find out it hasn't even been received yet, and we're now 15 days into a transaction. Listing expiration dates. So when you take a listing and it's a 6-month listing, our admin staff is going to put a little note in the task section to notify you probably about 10 days from the expiration date of the listing, so that you're going to get an email that says, oh, by the way, and because I see Mary Shelley Weaver on my screen, she'll get an email that says, hi, Mary, I just want to remind you that 123 Main Street in Brownstown is going to expire in 10 days. Just thought I'd let you be aware of that. So we're going to try to get as proactive as possible to help you out as agents. Accounting settlement notice is the same thing. In many instances, we have agents that just forget to put these in. We're going to put a task into our loops that basically say, hey, we're going to remind you to put the accounting settlement notice in, let's say 10 days before settlement. And oh, by the way, if in fact we do receive it from the agent and it's submitted, the admin staff is going to check it off and you'll never receive an email. So it is something that is there to benefit you. The other thing, which is the last thing here, is missing documents. I told you just a couple minutes ago that in many instances we'll send out that original email with a missing document and saying, hey, we're missing this, and that's the last that we ever hear of it. What we're going to do now is, let's say you're missing a consumer notice. Well, you know, in many instances, you're overlooking it. We're going to send the email out initially and say, oh, by the way, just want to let you know that we're missing the consumer notice. And they may tag that so that in a week, if we don't have the consumer notice, you as an agent are probably going to receive an email. And oh, by the way, you're going to receive an email every day that we don't have the consumer notice. Now, it's going to be a change, and I'll tell you ahead of time here, those emails go away if we get the form into the loop itself. We're not trying to be difficult. We just want to be compliant. That's what we're after, okay? So this is going to happen. These things are going to happen over the next 7 to 10 days. And once again, these are just little itty bitty pieces at this point in time. So are you prepared for a shifting market? I just pulled this off of Inman News this morning. Inman News is a real estate website that has national and international news having to do with real estate. And I'm not going to read this whole article, but it was an interview that was done with the NAR's chief economist, Lawrence Yun. And Lawrence gives his projections for what's happening ahead, the balance of 2019, and as we head into 2020. I was going to quote some things from his article here. 2020 total home sales will squeak past 2019 numbers. And oh, by the way, we're almost neck and neck right now with 2019, and we lost literally 60 to 90 days. That's how fast the market has been moving. So he anticipates across the country, we're going to be a little bit ahead of where we were last year. He also says he believes home sales will be slightly ahead of 2019 and then up in 2021 by about 8%, which is a great thing. We're continuing this momentum so that not only were we busy, but it's going to stay and gradually get a little nicer for us. I think we're going to start getting some more inventory, as you'll see here in a second. He does not believe there is a housing bubble at this time. Home purchase applications were up 30% from last year, 30%. That's a big difference when we were dealing with a bubble back in 2007, 2008. Those mortgage applications were falling off. That's not the case at this point in time. And perhaps the biggest nugget that I got from this article was the industry is beginning to see builders get more permits. And I've been keeping a close eye on this. Builders have really been reluctant to start pulling permits. That is starting to change. There's more builders across the country that are pulling permits, and their level of confidence is going up. So if there's more new product out there in our business, that can do nothing except help us in the industry as far as our inventory levels. As you know, because I share with you once a month, our inventory levels are really low. If we get builders start putting some things into it, that's nothing but positive. But are you prepared for this shifting market? So what do I mean by a shifting market? Well, right now, here is the Housing Affordability Index that's put out by NAR. All the way on the right is where it is today. All the way on the left is where it was in 1990. Now, for those of you that have been in the business for 5 years or less, this is the market that you've been dealing with right there. You're dealing with a market that it has a very strong housing affordability index. For those of us that are veterans, we had to deal with a market that looked like this, that was 15 to 20 years, that was considerably less than where the housing affordability market is today. So I'm not saying it's going to get there, and you've just heard some really good positive things from Lawrence Yun, but at some point we are going to be dealing with the market that was between 1990 and 2007, and it's going to look like that. And the question I have for agents that are in the business, both veteran and new to business agents, is, are we ready for that? So here's what our listings have looked like over the last 4 to 6 months. They have been flying off the shelf. Literally, you put something on the shelf and within a very small period of time, it's gone. You haven't really had to do too much as far as the seller. Many times you're going to the seller with a CMA and you're saying, I think your home's going to sell for about $250,000. And then there's some real estate agents that are using the tactic of, let's list below that to get into this massive bidding war, or it doesn't really matter what my CMA says because buyers are tripping all over themselves just trying to get into homes. So right now, our CMA skills may be, to be frank, deteriorating just a little bit. So here's another thing. We need to be ready for when listings aren't flying off the shelf. And I hope we get into a more balanced market. But here's what I'd like to impart. The very first thing that we need to start sharing with sellers when we get to that shifting market is buyers who are buying homes today. It's kind of like online dating. You got 7 to 10 seconds to take a look at something before somebody says, nope, not gonna look at that. They do the same thing on their phones with homes. If we aren't prepping our sellers in how to prep their home for sale, it could be an issue down the line. Right now, we're not doing a lot of that, or if we are doing it, it's not to the degree that it probably will be when we get to a balanced market. Buyers are going to want to move into homes that are ready right now, and they are willing to pay for a premium to get there. So how are we going to be explaining this to our sellers? And are we explaining this to the sellers right now? I'm hearing a lot of agents say, you know, I used to say to my sellers, well, we need to do these 10 things to get your home ready for sale. But a lot of agents are saying, I'm not even telling my sellers that anymore because they're putting it on the market right now. And within 2 or 3 days, it's just flying off the shelf. So why spend the money to prep it for sale? So I just want to warn you ahead of time here that when we get to a more balanced market, we're going to need to shift a little bit as far as prepping our sellers with the product that they're putting out there. Then we're going to have to price it to the market itself. We need to understand what affects value versus what increases marketability. They are two separate things. Now, what do I mean by that? A new roof. A new roof that you put on your house affects marketability. Chances are if you have a home, 2 homes sitting beside each other, one has a new roof, the other one's essentially the same but has a roof that's 15 to 20 years old, the one that has a new roof isn't worth more. But heck, it's going to sell a lot faster than the one on the right-hand side. That's what I mean by marketability. We need to understand which improvements to a house increase the marketability versus like a brand new kitchen probably affects more value, even though it will marketability. You can probably in an appraisal or in a CMA give more value for a home that has a brand new kitchen with updated appliances than you could for a new roof. That's what I mean by pricing it to the market. Understand, is it marketability or is it value? So the other thing we need to be aware of is we almost have to start thinking like an appraiser. And what does an appraiser look at when they get to a home? They're looking at things that they can deduct, or they're looking at things that they can add to base prices to increase or decrease things. One of the things they look for is, are there functionally obsolete things in a house? Because if there are, they're going to deduct for that. Now, here are 2 examples of functionally obsolete houses. The one on the left, it's an old kitchen. It's probably curable though, because you could probably go in there and spend some money and take care of that. However, the one on the right-hand side, and we've all seen this, we get into city properties. You know, you get up from the 2nd to the 3rd floor and you got one of these staircases that look like this. You really can't do too much about that, but really the only way you can get up to the 2nd floor with any kind of bed is this really a single bed usually. It's hard getting anything else up there other than that. That is functionally obsolete. So that 3rd floor square footage is not as valuable as another 3rd floor square footage that you can get things up to the 3rd floor. External obsolescence. Here are 2 good examples of things that kind of impact the value of a house. The one on the left, you're in the flight pattern. You got planes flying over this set of townhouses here. It's in the flight pattern. And oh, by the way, if you get up to Harrisburg International Airport, there are planes flying over Steelton all the time that look exactly like this. That impacts the value. Can you as a homeowner do anything about it? Nope. But you as an agent, you have to take that into consideration when pricing a house, in that this home is in a flight pattern, maybe an identical townhouse that might be a mile or 2 away is not in a flight pattern. Obviously, that's worth more. And then you got the old TMI. Now, TMI, I think it's been about a year now, has been shut down, is no longer going to be there. But I got to tell you, they are impending, or they are really nasty looking creatures that aren't going away anytime soon. And they're in people's backyards, and it's tough to share with people. These aren't going to impact the value of your home. Chances are it will. So this is external obsolescence. And then you got physical obsolescence. You got the one on the left-hand side. This is a roof, and we just talked about it. You can probably add a new roof. It'll increase the marketability of the house. However, the one on the right, that's probably a little far gone to invest some additional money into. Probably not going to be able to do too much to that. Is it going to impact the value? Yes. So keep that in mind as you're pricing homes. And then finally, the third leg of the stool is promotion and presentation. And here's where you as an agent right now can start getting ready for when we get into that balanced market, because many of these things that I'm going to share with you right here, we aren't even doing right now because we're putting the property in the MLS, and in 2 days we have 10 agreements. We're going to get to a more balanced market. And when we do, you're going to have to learn as an agent, not only to utilize all the marketing tools that are available to you, but some of the ones that are more current. Staging. If you're not a good stager as an agent, if you don't have a good staging partner, that's going to be a big thing in the future. Understand what staging can do for a property. Drone footage. It used to be probably 2 years ago, drones were kind of that thing that you saw in, 1 out of every 50 listings. Now it's like 1 out of 10 listings has a drone footage shot. The drone costs are coming down and down and down. There are some agents that actually have their own drones. So this is another part of the marketing piece that you're going to probably want to consider as we come out of or get into a more balanced market. Virtual showings. We just went through this. Many agents in our office have done virtual showings. Many agents haven't touched it at all. I think in the future, this is going to need to be part of our arsenal, virtual showings. If you didn't get involved with them, learn how to do them so that you can make it part of the package that you're offering to your sellers. Virtual brochures. Now the company does their magazines, the luxury collection. We do our home sale magazine. There's actually a commercial magazine. This is an example of a virtual brochure where we're putting together a virtual brochure and we're sending it out to people. There's more and more entities, companies, agents that are starting to use virtual brochures. If you haven't gotten involved with that or know how to do it, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services website is a good place to start. 3D tours. Once again, you go back 5 years, very seldom do you have a 3D tour. With what we just went through with the pandemic, more and more people were demanding 3D tours. They are becoming more and more inexpensive. In addition, if you have an iPhone, unfortunately not an Android, but if you have an iPhone, you can get on Zillow right now and you can do your own 3D tour through the Zillow 3D tour app, and you can put it together and it is free. So if you have an iPhone, I would get used to doing this, or if you didn't even know it existed, start experimenting with it. Get involved with 3D tours. And by the way, Zillow is working on an Android app for 3D tours also. So that's on the horizon. And in addition, social media blasts, where you're taking something, a listing, a sale, an open house, and you're blasting it out on social media. Social media is becoming a much greater part of what we are doing as an agent as far as our arsenal of marketing things that we do. These things, and there's more, but I just listed 6 things here that probably 5-10 years ago, we weren't even using as agents. And now they're becoming almost commonplace. So if you're not used to using some of these things, please, start dipping your toe in the water and get used to them, because when we get into a balanced market, I think sellers are going to start demanding many of these things. Okay. And finally, Your piece of inspiration for today. It's from Charles Darwin. It is not the strongest of species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. We just went through some incredible changes as an industry over the last couple of months. They've accelerated all kinds of things within our industry. Hopefully you've looked at some of the things that we've done, not only as a company, but as our industry, and you're embracing some of those things. Don't come out of this pandemic. Don't wait till the end of 2020. Don't get into 2021 and all of a sudden not have any of these things in your arsenal. Now's the time to learn them, to embrace them. Okay. Hope everybody has a great day, a great week. And once again, it looks like we're getting into some fall weather. So enjoy the day, everybody. Thanks. And I do see some things on our chat box. I'll concur with Colleen. We'll put our heads together and we'll answer some of those chats either on an individual basis or we'll put them in the email that goes out to the office. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tom.
Mm-hmm.